This is a completely fictional story created for entertainment and does not describe a real event involving Bruno Mars. At 9:38 p.m. on a fictional Friday night in Las Vegas, the Silver Crown Arena was shaking with the sound of more than 20,000 fans singing along to Bruno Mars. Golden lights swept across the crowd, phones glittered in the darkness, and Bruno moved across the stage with the effortless energy that had kept the audience standing for most of the night. Everything was going exactly as planned until Bruno suddenly looked toward the back of the arena. He stopped moving. The band continued for another few seconds, but Bruno didn't sing. His eyes remained fixed on one person. Near an emergency exit, sitting alone on the floor, was an older man wearing a faded gray jacket and worn-out shoes. Beside him was a piece of cardboard with 3 handwritten words. "Trying to get home." Bruno lowered his microphone. The drummer noticed first, then the guitarist. One by one, the instruments became quieter until the entire arena fell into an uncomfortable silence. Bruno pointed toward the man. "Can we get some light over there?" A spotlight moved across the audience and stopped on the stranger. The man immediately lowered his head. Bruno stared at him. "Hey," he said into the microphone. "Are you okay?" The man slowly looked up. His eyes were tired. His beard was untrimmed, and his face carried the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from missing one night's sleep. Bruno walked toward the edge of the stage. "What's your name?" The man hesitated before answering. "Daniel." Bruno nodded. "Daniel, did you come here for the show?" Daniel gave a small, embarrassed smile. "No, sir." A few people in the crowd laughed softly, but Bruno didn't. "Then what are you doing here?" Daniel looked down at the cardboard sign. "Trying to get home." Bruno glanced at it. "Where's home?" Daniel swallowed. "I don't know anymore." The arena became completely silent. Bruno looked at the security team. "Could somebody bring him a chair?" Daniel immediately shook his head. No, I'm fine." Bruno smiled gently. "You don't look fine." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I've had better days." The audience laughed softly again. Bruno crouched near the edge of the stage. "Have you eaten?" Daniel didn't answer. That was enough. Bruno turned toward a crew member. "Get him something hot to eat, please." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "You don't have to do that." Bruno replied. "I know." Then he paused. "I want to." A security guard helped Daniel stand. The crowd began applauding, but Daniel looked almost frightened by the attention. When he reached the front of the stage, Bruno noticed something sticking out of his jacket pocket. It was an old photograph. "What's that?" Bruno asked. Daniel immediately covered it with his hand. "Nothing." Bruno smiled. "People don't usually protect nothing like that." Michael Carter walked slowly down the aisle as thousands of people watched him. He was 29 years old, wearing a black jacket and carrying an old backpack over one shoulder. Daniel stared at him as if he were looking at a ghost. "Michael?" he whispered. Michael stopped a few feet away. "Hey, Dad." Daniel's breathing became uneven. He hadn't seen his son in almost 5 years. Emma stood between them, crying silently. Bruno watched from nearby, sensing that this reunion was more complicated than it appeared. Daniel looked at Michael's face. "Why didn't you tell me you were here?" Michael smiled sadly. "I didn't know if I was ready." Daniel nodded. "Neither was I." Michael took the folded paper from Emma. "I found this in Grandma's things after she passed." Daniel's face changed. "Your grandmother?" Michael nodded. "She kept it." He handed the paper to Daniel. Daniel unfolded it carefully. It was a letter he had written to Emma 6 years earlier. Daniel recognized every word. "I thought these were returned." Emma looked at him. "Grandma got one of them." Daniel's hands shook. "She never gave it to you?" Emma shook her head. "No." Daniel read the letter silently. It wasn't a perfect letter. It was full of apologies, regret, and promises Daniel had never been able to keep. But at the bottom, he had written one sentence. "I hope someday you understand that losing you was never what I wanted." Emma touched his arm. "I understand now." Daniel looked at her. "Why didn't you tell me you were here tonight?" Emma smiled through her tears. "Because I didn't know you were here." She explained that she and Michael had come to the concert because Emma had received a ticket from a friend. During the show, she noticed Daniel sitting near the back. First, she thought she was imagining it. Then she recognized his old jacket. She had wanted to approach him, but she was too scared. Then Bruno stopped the concert. Daniel looked at Bruno. "You did all this because you saw me sitting there?" Bruno nodded. "I just thought you needed somebody to notice you." Daniel smiled sadly. "You have no idea." Bruno looked at the family. "Maybe tonight wasn't about me at all." Emma laughed softly. Then Daniel noticed something strange about Michael. He seemed nervous. What's wrong? Daniel asked. Michael looked toward Emma. She nodded. Tell him. Michael took a breath. Dad, I didn't come here just to find you. Daniel's smile disappeared. Why did you come? Michael opened his backpack. Inside was a small wooden box. He handed it to Daniel. Mom gave me this before she died. Daniel froze. His former wife, Sarah, had passed away 3 years earlier. Daniel hadn't attended the funeral. He hadn't even known where it was held. She knew where you were? Daniel asked. Michael nodded. She knew you were struggling. Daniel looked at the box. Why didn't anyone tell me? Michael's voice softened. Because you disappeared. Daniel lowered his head. I know. Mom wanted me to find you when I thought you were ready. Daniel opened the box. Inside was a small brass key and another photograph. It showed Daniel and Sarah standing beside Emma and Michael when the children were young. Daniel touched the picture with one finger. I don't deserve this. Michael shook his head. It's not about what you deserve. Bruno stood nearby listening. What's the key for? He asked. Michael answered. I don't know. Daniel looked confused. You don't know? Michael shook his head. Mom only said, when you find your father, give him this. Daniel turned the key over in his hand. A number was engraved on it. 214. Bruno looked at it. Room number. Michael shrugged. Maybe. Daniel stared at the key. Then suddenly he remembered something. Years earlier, Sarah had rented a small storage unit after they lost their house. The number on the unit had been 214. Daniel hadn't thought about it in years. There's a storage place in Chicago, he whispered. Unit 214. Emma looked at him. What's inside? Daniel shook his head. I don't know, Michael said. Maybe we should find out. The audience had remained strangely quiet throughout the conversation. Bruno looked at the clock. The concert had already been paused for nearly 20 minutes. A crew member approached and whispered something to him. Bruno nodded. Then he turned toward the audience. I know we came here to put on a show, he said. But sometimes life writes a better story than we ever could. The crowd applauded. Bruno continued. Daniel, Emma, Michael, I don't know what happens next, but I hope you three don't wait another 6 years to find out. Daniel looked at his children. Emma smiled. Michael nodded. Bruno asked Daniel, can you get to Chicago? Daniel laughed nervously. I don't even have a ticket. Bruno smiled. We'll worry about tomorrow. Daniel looked at him. You really don't have to help. Bruno replied. I know. Then he looked toward Emma. But maybe you can help him. Emma nodded. Bruno walked back to the microphone. We're going to play one more song. Daniel looked surprised. You don't have to. Bruno smiled. Actually, I do. People paid to hear me sing. The crowd laughed. But we're changing the plan. Bruno turned toward Emma. You said you play piano? Emma nodded. Come up here. She looked stunned. Me? Yeah. Emma hesitated. Daniel whispered. Go. Emma walked to the piano. Bruno sat nearby. What do you want to play? She shook her head. I don't know. Daniel smiled. You always liked that old song. Emma looked at him. Dad. What? You remember? Daniel nodded. I remember everything. Emma sat at the piano. Her fingers touched the keys. She began playing a simple melody she had written when she was 17. Daniel recognized it immediately. His eyes filled with tears. That's the audition song, he whispered. Emma nodded. I finished it. Bruno listened carefully. The melody was quiet, fragile, and beautiful. As Emma played, Daniel closed his eyes. He imagined the 17-year-old girl waiting outside the audition hall, watching cars pass, wondering why her father had failed her. He imagined all the years she had carried that disappointment. When the song ended, the arena remained silent for several seconds before exploding into applause. Emma stood. Bruno hugged her. Daniel wiped his face. I'm proud of you, he said. Emma looked at him. I know. That simple answer meant more to him than any speech could have. The concert resumed, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The audience sang louder. Daniel remained near the side of the stage, watching his children. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what he had lost. He was thinking about what might still be possible. After the concert, Bruno came over. You three got somewhere to stay? Michael nodded. We're together. Bruno smiled. Good. Daniel looked at the key. We're going to Chicago. Bruno nodded. Then go. Daniel laughed. I don't know what's in that storage unit. Bruno smiled. Maybe that's the point. Later that night, the family sat together in a quiet hotel room. Daniel barely slept. At 4:12 a.m., He finally got up and looked out the window. Las Vegas was still glowing below. Emma appeared beside him. "Can't sleep?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "I'm scared." Emma looked at him. "Of what's in the box?" "No." He looked at her. "Of finding out that I missed even more than I thought." Emma leaned against the window. "Then we'll find out together." Daniel looked at her. "You really mean that?" She nodded. "Yeah." Michael walked into the room. "Our flight leaves at noon." Daniel smiled. "Okay." Michael looked at his father. "Dad." "Yeah. You're coming with us, right?" Daniel nodded. "If you'll have me." Michael smiled. "We wouldn't be here if we didn't." The next morning, the three of them left Las Vegas together. But none of them knew that the storage unit contained something that would finally explain why Sarah had kept searching for Daniel even after their marriage ended. And when the lock on Unit 214 finally opened, they would discover a secret that would change how all three children remembered their father forever. 3 days later, Daniel stood in front of a rusted storage facility on the outskirts of Chicago with Emma and Michael beside him. The sky was gray, the air was cold, and Daniel's hand trembled as he held the brass key. "You ready?" Michael asked. Daniel shook his head. "No." Emma smiled. "Good. Me neither." Daniel inserted the key into the lock marked 214. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door rolled upward with a long metallic groan. Inside were dozens of cardboard boxes, an old wooden chair, a broken lamp, several children's toys, and a small upright piano covered with a sheet. Daniel stepped inside. He immediately recognized the piano. "Sarah kept this?" Emma whispered. Daniel nodded. "I thought it was gone." Michael moved toward a stack of boxes. One was labeled EMMA. Another said Michael. Daniel saw a third box with his own name. He stared at it. "Why would she keep this?" Emma opened the box. Inside were photographs, old birthday cards, newspaper clippings, and a stack of unopened letters. Daniel picked up one envelope. His name was written on it. The date was 5 years earlier. He opened it carefully. Sarah's handwriting filled the page. She wrote that she knew Daniel had been struggling. She wrote that she was angry, but she never stopped hoping he would recover. She wrote that Emma missed him more than she admitted. She wrote that Michael pretended not to care, but secretly searched online for him. And then she wrote one final thing. "If you ever find this, please understand that your children never stopped loving you. They were hurt. They were angry, but they never stopped loving you." Daniel sat on the floor. He couldn't speak. Emma knelt beside him. "Mom knew." Daniel nodded. "She knew everything." Michael found another box. Inside was a small digital recorder. He pressed the button. Sarah's voice filled the storage unit. "If you're hearing this, then Daniel finally came home." Daniel covered his mouth. Sarah continued, "I don't know what life will look like when you hear this. Maybe the kids are adults. Maybe they're angry. Maybe Daniel has changed. I hope he has. But if he hasn't, please don't give up on him." Daniel closed his eyes. Sarah's voice continued, "I loved him. I was hurt by him. Both things can be true." Emma began crying. Michael looked down. Sarah's final words were simple. "Sometimes people don't need someone to erase their mistakes. They need someone to believe they can make different choices." The recording ended. Nobody spoke for a long time. Daniel finally whispered, "She forgave me." Michael shook his head. "Maybe she did." Daniel looked at his children. "I don't know how to fix everything." Emma took his hand. "You don't have to fix everything today." Michael nodded. "Just don't disappear again." Daniel looked at both of them. "I won't." They spent the afternoon going through the storage unit. They found childhood drawings, old school programs, birthday cards, and a stack of photographs. At the bottom of one box, Emma discovered the original sheet music for her audition song. She held it carefully. "Mom kept this." Daniel smiled. "She believed in you." Emma looked at him. "Did you?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Every day." Emma hugged him. Later, they moved the old piano out of the storage unit. It needed repairs, but Emma insisted on keeping it. "It was the last piano we had before everything fell apart," she said. Daniel nodded. "Then we'll fix it." Those words became the beginning of something new. Daniel found a small apartment near his children. Michael helped him find steady work at a community center. Emma began visiting him every Sunday. The first few weeks were awkward. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they sat quietly. Sometimes old anger came back. But Daniel stayed. He didn't run. He didn't disappear. He listened. Months later, Emma organized a small concert for local musicians. She asked Daniel to attend. Before she went on stage, she found him waiting in the hallway. "I'm nervous," she said. Daniel smiled. "Good." She laughed. "That's your advice? It means you care." Emma nodded. "Will you stay?" Daniel looked surprised. "Of course." She squeezed his hand. "You better." When Emma walked onto the stage, Daniel sat in the front row. She played the same song she had written at 17. But this time, when she finished, her father was there. He stood before anyone else and applauded. Emma looked directly at him. Her eyes filled with tears. After the performance, she ran to him and hugged him. Daniel whispered, "I'm sorry I missed the first one." Emma answered, "You didn't miss this one." Nearly a year after the night Bruno had stopped his fictional concert, Daniel returned to Las Vegas with Emma and Michael. They attended another Bruno Mars concert, this time as guests with seats near the front. When Bruno saw Daniel, he smiled and pointed toward him. Daniel laughed. Bruno didn't stop the concert. He simply continued singing. After the show, they met briefly. Bruno hugged Daniel and asked, "How's the family?" Daniel looked at Emma and Michael. "We're still figuring it out." Bruno smiled. "That's real life." Daniel thanked him. Bruno shook his head. "You did the hard part." Daniel looked at him. "You noticed me." Bruno smiled. "Sometimes that's enough to start something." Daniel looked toward the arena. Almost a year earlier, he had been sitting on a cold floor with a cardboard sign, believing nobody cared whether he lived or disappeared. Now his daughter stood beside him. His son was laughing nearby. His life wasn't perfect. The past hadn't vanished. But he had a home. Not the old house. Not the city. Not the life he had lost. A different home. One built slowly from apologies, patience, and second chances. Before leaving, Daniel took the old cardboard sign from his bag. He had kept it as a reminder. The words "trying to get home" were still visible, faded but readable. He looked at it for a moment, then folded it carefully and handed it to Bruno. "Keep it," he said. Bruno looked at the sign. "Why?" Daniel smiled. "Because I finally found my way." Bruno nodded. "Then you don't need this anymore." Daniel shook his head. "No, but maybe somebody else does." Bruno understood. He folded the sign and placed it safely on a nearby table. Daniel walked outside with Emma and Michael. The Las Vegas lights reflected in the glass buildings, and the night air was warm. Emma slipped her arm through her father's. Michael walked on his other side. Daniel looked at them and smiled. He had spent years believing that his worst mistake had permanently defined him. But standing there, he finally understood something he wished he had learned much earlier. A person can lose years without losing every chance to begin again. Sometimes one unexpected moment is enough to open a door. Sometimes a stranger notices the person everyone else walks past. Sometimes a daughter decides that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes a son chooses to come back. And sometimes, after years of wandering, a person discovers that home isn't the place they were trying to return to. Home is the place where someone is still willing to stand beside them when they finally arrive. As Daniel walked away beneath the glowing Las Vegas skyline, Emma squeezed his hand and asked, "Ready to go home?" Daniel smiled, looked at his children, and answered, "Yeah, this time, I know where home is."